I hit it now. I was just lying to you earlier. I'm gonna have to repent for that. I hadn't actually hit it, but it is. We are live now, though.
Well, if that's a lie, I mean, were you really just trying to show people the true beginnings of how the podcast gets rolling each time?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't lie to me. It led me on a little bit.
Just led you on a little bit. Yeah. See, these are the ways that people get into trouble, Dan. Yeah. The way that we look at things. I didn't really lie. I just,
Was
you know,
little.
I didn't tell him exactly what the truth was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good morning, afternoon, evening, podcast listeners. It's morning for us. Of the morning of the first week of the first
There we
Texas
go.
major stock show and rodeo, as they say.
And rodeo.
I'm gonna say Dan's at home and I'm at home, but this will be I'll speak for me, and then Dan can speak for himself. But this will be a mobile podcast for the next month, for this half of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm not. Ooh, guess I could make it mobile. I did move it from the
I was gonna say you every time we
dining
jump
room
on,
to
you're
the
in a new
office
home in your
this morning.
a new room in your house.
So yeah, it's already been mobile. Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. We're not as busy as you. Some of our show pigs lied to us in the beginning and said they were show pigs, and now they're not.
I
So
bet.
we
I
won't
bet.
be rolling quite as hard
Uh,
as a lot of guys will this year. Part of it sucks, but man told me a long time ago people in show pigs were made to disappoint, and as soon as we figure all that out, life gets a little more understandable. Sure, we can add lots of things in that, but
yeah, I bet you. Well, I know you're not the only person disappointed in the show pig at this point in the year, because another one's myself. But I bet there's plenty of others. But
sure.
hopefully you, me, and everyone else has something they're excited about the show too. So
Yeah.
we'll look up, and it'll be April, and everybody will know how they did.
Want another one.
You
Wanting more,
yeah, I
more
hope about April
punishment.
12th. I want another one.
Yeah.
April 12th. That's a very busy weekend. Uh, it seems like I saw a Ligonier conference in Florida, resource I use. Some guys I like to listen to. Anyways, they have a conference. And I thought, boy, that'd be fun to maybe go to that conference. Let's see when it is. April 10th through the 12th.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that's not the first time I've come across. There was another conference in South Carolina, Kerry, wanted to do April 9th through the 11th or something. It's like, oh, that's a good time to plan a farm sale. Right on,
Farm sale. I wonder if we're playing baseball. I'm the coach. I could make it. Yep. April 12th through the 13th. Someone decided to play baseball.
we could throw some bases out below the sale facility over here.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun?
Probably be muddy
Little
that
rain.
time of
Hey.
year.
Yeah. Little wiffle ball in the back.
Yeah, we could do it. But anyway, welcome back, Dan.
Thank you. Man,
Good to
I
have you this
appreciate
morning.
it. I'm going to try to make it a little more often.
If anyone
No
is wondering,
promises. Don't want to disappoint anyone.
if anyone's wondering why there's times that it's a solo podcast and it's or to this point, it's been just a solo podcast of me. I got to get Dan coached up a bit because when we can't meet, I've got the recording stuff here, but I could get him coached up enough that he could do some solo recording there. We're just not quite to that point yet. And that is not in any means a boasting of my supreme skills in podcasting, but as y'all all well know by this point, if you've listened for any amount of time. So when our schedules don't line up, it ends up
Yeah,
being me. But I think we can get him. I think I can get him trained at this button.
maybe.
Get a little solo day, and that way we get a few more listeners. Get me out of the way a little bit.
Ooh. I don't know. I could probably do it. I don't know. It's like this morning. You couldn't hear me, and I rattled the old solo over here for a little bit, and it came on.
And if
Didn't
it
have a
didn't work,
hammer.
just kind of tap on it a little bit.
Yes.
Oh
I don't
man,
know.
no, it is going to be a whirlwind. You've got Fort Worth pigs, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna leave sometime. Me in a little bit. Rowan's gonna show her first big show pig. Her first big show, I guess, this week.
Debut.
He is disappointed, but I've got my theory and of why we're taking him to Fort Worth at the weight he's going, and see what happens
Yeah.
next week. If my theory's true, then I'll let everybody know. If not, then
Stay tuned.
I promise you, me and Rowan are gonna have a great time no matter what.
Right.
And there'll be a basketball or a volleyball in their hands. So, well, I guess it's too late to tell now. But you girls, y'all want to play ball? I don't know what pin we're going to be in, but come find us. She will play ball all day long. She's ready. Might show a pig too.
Set the ball
Thursday
down the
morning.
shore, show pig.
Yeah.
Oh. Yep. There. I think I'm gonna end up spending more time in the cow barn this week than the pig barn. It seems like.
That'd
So
probably be all right. Some more room, maybe. I
maybe.
don't know. I haven't been in the new barn.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't either. Yeah, that'll be exciting. I forgot about. I keep forgetting about that. I guess by the time most of you or some of you listen to this, I'll be in it. Both of us will be in it.
Yeah. Head out.
All
Well,
right.
no.
Now this one's going to drop almost live.
Okay. Okay.
Almost live. So
Okay.
we could have
Yeah.
just
Then
live streamed it out. One of these days, I'm going to use that feature. We're going to do that. But
I'll just listen to it on my way down.
yeah, this would be a good one for you. A good episode you could listen to on your way into Fort Worth, Dan, if you'd like to.
Boost the ratings a little bit.
Yeah, get one more download in that mark there. Always
Yes.
jump in. Always jump in. But no,
Mm.
we're glad to have y'all with us this morning.
Yes.
I always say this morning if it's morning, but y'all know what I mean
Yeah.
by this point. Um, yeah, if you see us, if we see you, we won't know it's you. We might, but either way, look us up. We'll be Fort Worth to San Angelo to San Antonio to Houston to Austin for me. Dan
Yeah.
will probably add one in there that I'm not going to take one away, I bet, of some sort or fashion. But
Yeah. We go to Kerrville, then San Antonio,
yeah,
Houston. I don't know about Austin. Depends on what the county fair is shaping up to look like.
can't sacrifice the county fair right there at the end.
No, really can't. Especially not for a little bit.
Oh yeah, first rattle out, you gotta. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
but, well, we jump back in this week again to our study of Luke as we continue on in this season. And if you've been with us and know last week, we made it through 5 verses of the calling of Matthew and spent didn't really realize till till after the fact thinking about it, and spent as much time, probably more time, talking about the gathering. I don't know if Dan, if you've listened to that or not, but talked as much about the reception that Matthew threw in the gathering, and what that looked like of Jesus and the tax collectors and sinners and people thereafter in those last 29 through 32, as much as really the calling of Matthew himself. And again, if you hadn't listened to that, go back and check it out. But I kind of got to thinking just about everything we talked about there, but even that Matthew then, from that state of somewhat the outcast of outcasts as far as the people were concerned,
Hmm.
and the trader of traders, and this, that, and the other, as a tax collector, the Lord not only calls, but then calls on to be one of his 12 apostles. So, um, and it uses the Spirit, uses him to write this, or not this gospel, but his gospel, Matthew's gospel. So, um, anyways, yeah. So we'll pick back up in 33 today and kind of continue that same conversation that Jesus and the Pharisees and scribes are having, and some of John's disciples here. In that same setting. So if you were with us last week, we're going to pick right back up into that same context of what's going on in verse 33. So
Yeah, that the 27 through 31, I think though that's just an incredible short passage there. And I just want to read one verse and leave that with you guys that maybe you're listening to this one didn't catch last week. So I'd encourage you to go back and catch Josh and his take on all that. But I want to read verse 28. It says, "So leaving everything behind, he got up and began to follow him." Right after Jesus asked Matthew, "Follow me," or told him, "Follow me," and that was Matthew's response. So what's your response to God's calling on your life? Is it like Matthew? So leaving everything behind, he got up and followed him. Immediately he followed him. Where's your response? So I encourage you to go back and listen to that with Josh, and so much good stuff in there. And then let's just jump into 33 here and see what we can figure out from what Jesus is telling his disciples today. It says, "And they said to him, John's disciples fast often and say prayers, and those of the Pharisees do the same, but yours eat and drink." Jesus said to him, "You can't make the wedding guests fast while the groom is with them, can you? But the time will come when the groom will be taken away from them. Then they will fast in those days." Sometimes Jesus says stuff that, man, it's way over my head, and it's hard to just try to figure out what he's doing. But he's like, and and Josh, I'll do my little take on this, and then we'll ready to hear your take. Maybe I should let you do yours first, and then I can just probably sit back and say, yeah, that sounds awesome, and we'll move on to the next verse. But man, Jesus is like, hey, I'm right with these guys. What is their need to worry about fasting and prayer when I'm with them, when I'm teaching them, I'm talking to them, I'm leading them? They're following me every day of their life. And yeah, they're probably still some knuckleheads, but Jesus is right with them. But when Jesus does go and eventually prepare a place for them and us, those guys had a hard enough time walking with Jesus and doing everything he was asking them to do and understanding everything he was saying. And they walked right beside him. And so now that we get to read of Jesus and we know Jesus because of our faith in him, and I don't know how many of you guys have ever just fasted and prayed, because when you fast, you have to pray. And whether it's fasting from food or fasting from something else that you think is getting in the way of your relationship with Christ, or just not participating in something for a certain time to help you grow your relationship with Christ, to concentrate and to focus on him. In January, our church did a fast prayer and fasting time. And our pastor's like, fast from whatever you want to. I'm going to do it from food. He goes, and I'm not going to bring it up every week. Y'all do you. You fast for 21 days. You fast and pray. So Reagan and I we fasted from, man, supper time. And that's one of my favorite times of day is coming in and eating supper after we've been outside either playing ball or in the barn or just doing whatever we're doing. And it took a lot of prayer, but it turned that focus to food to focus on God. And it grew my relationship with him. And it opened my eyes to some more things that I need to be letting go of. Just by something that, and man, we could have made it a lot bigger deal, but man, we're just giving up a meal a day and spending that time in prayer. First few days, man, prayers changed from the first few days to the last 2.5 weeks. Prayers changed from, God, man, I'm starving. What am I going to do, to being thankful for the opportunity to do something like that and focus my thoughts and prayers on God during that time. But Josh, this probably isn't anywhere where you were going to go with this. Uh,
No, I think it's
but go
great.
ahead.
I think no, I think it's perfect because as you, and I was hoping you would bring y'all's recent deal up, and I thought that was interesting. That this is where we were this week, and that y'all were
Yeah.
just finishing that, and I would say that's definitely the Lord's timing,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah. I was going to say coincidence, but however you want to put
right,
it.
right. When I read that, it's one of those times that you just kind of chuckle and say, "Yeah, that was, yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't plan that we were going to be right here today."
Welcome
Uh,
back, Reed.
right, exactly. So
Get into fasting.
no, I think that's perfect, and into the, in the a few different thoughts that I've had, thinking about this and some things I learned that I'll just share with y'all. And so it's interesting to me, and I didn't know this. The only actual fast that was prescribed in the Mosaic Law was on the Day of Atonement. Um, every other fast that these Pharisees would do in reference were voluntary. They were, as Reed just mentioned, and gave a perfect example of what they just came out of with their church. That they were for a specific purpose. They're, whether it's a specific, being penitent for something, a sorrowful thing, a mournful thing, um, just earnest prayer in general, but it was intentional and voluntary for a specific purpose. And what the Pharisees and the scribes had turned this into, and the Jewish leaders at this time, um, was another act of holiness in their mind. Um, we see in Matthew 6 where Jesus is teaching his disciples how to fast, and he says, "Whenever you fast, do not put on a gloomy face as the hypocrites do, for they neglect their appearance so that they will be noticed by men when they are fasting. Truly, I say to you, they have their full reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that your fasting will not be noticed by men, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." So they had turned this into um, another part of their works righteousness that when we get to Luke 18, I believe it is, in the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee, he makes the reference that the Pharisee in that parable makes the reference that he fasts twice a week. This has become I go to church on Sunday because that's what we do this week type of scenario for these guys. Um, in contrast to like what Dan just said, a specific purpose, like he talked about his pastor, you do it between you and the Lord, and that's the way that Christ described it there in Matthew 6. Um, so I think that's again one of those times where, and as we get into the Sabbath law too, we'll talk about where these Jewish leaders that Jesus is speaking to twist and add and add their own works on top of what God commanded and what the purpose of that was for. Um, I thought it was interesting the way that Matthew words this. That's in this same passage in Matthew 9, verse 15. It says, "And Jesus said to them," so we're in the same setting, the disciples of John. It actually says in Matthew, "Then the disciples of John came to him asking, 'Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?' And Jesus said to them, 'The attendants of the bridegroom cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them.'" So, and kind of exactly what Dan said of why would they be mourning and fasting when the Messiah has come? The Messiah is amongst them. They are with the Christ, the one that they've been looking to. And just to me, I think of today, we're in the last days, and the time between Jesus' first and second coming, and looking for the Messiah to come, looking for Jesus' return to come and gather his church, and take us home. Can you imagine when he shows up and you're here amongst him? There will be no mourning; it will be joy. So the fast, in those times, and what they're for, um, to focus on him, he would be amongst us. So I think that's a lot of the same of what he's saying is how can they fast when the bridegroom is amongst them? But they will fast when he goes away. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the take that I got on it. We do see it back in Luke 4 where Jesus did fast in for 40 days in the wilderness. And I'll tell you, not necessarily just to fasting, but before we move on to the next few verses here, I the other night I had a deal I had to deal with at isolation, and it was after dark, and anyway, so I ran down there and got that tended to, and then Billy had borrowed the trailer. They'd had a little calf they needed to haul, and anyways, they needed me to unhook it, and when they got back, I wasn't. I think we were collecting boards. I wasn't where I could do it. So when I got through with that at isolation, I backed up, unhooked the trailer, and took Billy's pickup down. If you've never been here, Billy and Jane, they live right inside the gate there at the road. So I parked it down there, and my phone had died, and so it was about to die, so it was plugged in. Anyways, a lot of details that are unnecessary for the point of this, but um, I was walking back up the hill. And again, if you've ever been here, we live on a hill. And I was walking from their place back up to mine, and so my phone was in the house. It was dark, stars were out. It was peaceful and nice, and I'm just walking up the hill, and for whatever reason, I got to thinking about all of the times that Jesus removes himself out to pray and to seek communion with the Father during his walk on the earth as a man. And all in that moment, it was just and again, I didn't stop. It was all just as I was walking. But um, to think of the distractions and all of the things we really don't realize how much we've got around us all the time, and taking our thoughts, our attention, etc., all of the time. And like I say, this is a little off off subject of what we're dealing with in the text right here, but um, man, it was just one of those slap you in the face, wake up moments of that you don't realize and that you need. And I was so thankful that my phone was about dead, and that because I'm sure if I had it, I would have been responding to a text message or looking at some social media, something or whatever. So it kind of gives you a recalibration. So, anyways, that kind of just slide in there in between these two parts of this passage. But yeah,
It's good to slow down,
yeah,
even for a moment, right? You slowed down for just a moment, and God spoke right then and there.
right,
Walking up the hill, really not. I mean, a couple of minutes you can be up the hill to your house and in the door, but God slowed you down long enough and took distractions away. It's like, hey, I just want to talk to you right quick, and that's awesome.
yeah,
I love it, love it. Uh, so I just Googled right quick what that verse means, just to see what else was out there, and as far as why he was saying why they don't fast, and you know, in one of them it says Jesus' presence is worthy of celebration. There's no need to fast. And my favorite one was uh, I'll read the next one. It says Jesus is the way to salvation. People don't need to fast while he's with them. And then my favorite one was fasting without listening to Jesus is a waste of time. And that's where you went to why he was saying, hey, don't let people know you're fasting. And our pastor did an awesome job. He goes, guys, I'm going to tell y'all, this is what we're going to do the next 21 days. This is what I'm going to do. You do it on your own. And then we're going to talk about it in day 22. We're not going to talk about it again. We're just going to do it. You do you. And we're not going to brag about it. We're not going to talk about it, and following the scripture there. Don't let people know you're fasting. Don't brag about it. Don't look all to show. I mean, luckily I'm in my home when it's supper time, and you get hangry, and just but we just were able to spend time with God in prayer, and it was just really really nice. And Josh, I'm taking a play out of your book here. I've learned that uh, do not disturb button on that phone works really well.
It's nice.
It is nice. Your phone's not going off in your pocket, and then you'll remember, I better check on some things, and check, throw it back in your pocket.
No, that's one of the better
It's time to
features
slow
they've
down.
added.
No doubt about it. And I love what you just said. Just you had a chance. You just slowly walked up there, walked up the hill. We're not gonna walk up the hill very fast anyway. So, and guys, like, here we go. We're gonna talk. Just gonna remind you of how nice and still, or how nice it is to be still for just a few minutes. I love it. In verse 36 of Luke 5, he said, he also told them a parable. No one tears a patch from a new garment and puts it on an old garment. Otherwise, not only will he tear the new, but also the piece from the new garment will not match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins, it will spill, and the skins will be ruined. No new wine is put into fresh No new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and no one after drinking old wine wants new, because he says the old is better.
This is one of those passages that when I read it the first time through or the second time through, I'm like, all right, what is he trying to say? And 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 that's just just being real with you. That's where I come from at first. Like, okay, what does this mean? And where is he going with this? And so fortunately, we got to talk about this last Wednesday night. A group of us that were studying together, and we get to go through this passage and just talk about it. And again, as we continue on, we can think of this concept in general of and by God's grace through a sermon a couple of weeks ago, and then just this study last week on this particular verse, I've understood this much more clearly. Is um, just as what we read and what we will read when we get into chapter 6 of these Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes, the way that they, just like in this fasting deal, the way they apply it, they took what we would assume, or what I used to assume, would be part of the Mosaic law, the Old Testament law. But when you look into it, they just add so much on top of it that wasn't commanded by God, but became traditions of men, in addition to it. And so what they're clinging to still is works righteousness. As we look to the Old Testament laws, we look to the Mosaic law. I'll never forget the first time I read through Leviticus, and for whatever reason, I actually think I listened through it, and I can remember for just constantly seeing. God's grace provided. It was Him listing out these sacrifices and ceremonies and the things for them to do. But it just as today though, it was God providing a way to forgive His people of their sin, and as we read, as we see now that we've got the New Testament, and we can see in Hebrews, um, that those types and shadows of things, it wasn't the animal sacrifices that saved, or that covered their sins, but it was God. And it was just as with Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him as righteousness. The same through the Mosaic law. It was a provision of grace, not in the work itself, but in believing in God for what He said He would do. And so now, as Jesus is on the scene and here in the flesh, God made flesh, He's confronting and convicting these religious leaders, not because they are following the law, but because they have turned the Mosaic law into this works righteousness. I'm going to earn it. And these are the things that keep me holy. And that's where we see things like what I read in Matthew 6 of when you fast, you do it for the looks of men. You do it twice a week because you think it makes you holy. But then when we look at it, we see, like we said earlier, these fasts, the only one prescribed was on the Day of Atonement. Everything else was voluntary, and as Jesus said, to be done in private between you and the Lord. You will have, if you do it for the looks of men. So um, I think here he's still making that comparison, that if you try to bring this mentality of this whitewashed tomb and these exterior things and these, you continue to keep the ceremonies, and as we look into Acts, he says that, or in Romans, he says, no one will be saved by the works of the law, but only by faith in Christ. Um, so I think he's making that comparison, and at the end, when he says that the old is good enough, or that the old is better, these guys are clinging to, they're looking at the one who forgives sins. We read that in chapter 5, and they're looking at the Messiah that's come to fulfill the law, and they're clinging tightly to that instead of believing God for what He said He would do, what He said He would send, and that's right in front of them. Um, and Jesus just kind of makes the comparison of new wine, and new wine put into old wineskins that are already stretched and don't have their elasticity are going to burst, and you lose the wine and the skins. Um, and then I'll kick it over to read. I'm going to read one more verse here in Matthew 23:23. I think kind of um, really grabs my attention on a topic like this. It says, and this is Jesus talking. It says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin." And so they tithing mint, dill, and cumin. They're taking their herbs and their garden things, and providing the tithe, and doing things by that they should be. He said, but have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others. So that's just kind of a basic verse, and it pulled um, out there. But I think kind of compares. There's other spots where he talks about you whitewashed tombs who look good on the outside, but are full of dead men's bones on the inside. And that's I think the point maybe that he's trying to make here.
When when you became a follower of Jesus, and I'll go and I say this, I quote or not, I reference this story all the time, but it's the woman at the well, and Jesus' words were to her, "Go and sin no more." When we came and became a follower of Jesus, we didn't keep doing what we had been doing as an unbeliever. We we didn't continue in our old sinful ways. Now, were they immediately gone? Maybe not. Maybe so. But we knew, and that is part of the sanctification process, growing each day to become more and more like Christ. And so you're not trying to hang on to that old and cling to the old with the new salvation, the new relationship in Jesus Christ. It was fully embrace. He was telling those guys, you've got to fully embrace my teachings and not hang on to your old beliefs or not stack it on top of the old beliefs you had. Let it all go and cling to me. Uh, if we try to patch Jesus in and out of in our old selves, our old ways, it's going to ruin both. It'll damage our relationship with Christ, but it'll ruin our testimony. Well, there's Reed. The other day he told me he had given his life to Christ, but man, he hadn't changed. He hadn't done anything different. We got to get rid of the old and not cling on to it. Glance at the past and look forward to the future. Remember and learn. And I've never had the opportunity to pour wine in skins, but I can see where that would definitely not work, Josh, if pouring the new wine into the old skins. I've had some patches on some jeans before, and they definitely did not match up.
That's right.
But that
Yeah.
didn't last, It didn't last forever, and that's what, man. When we become one with Christ, it's a new day, and it's new days to follow, and I know that's our guy that preached yesterday is our young adult pastor, and he called it's a Christianese saying, sanctification. That's a big word, but that is what believers are in the process of doing and should be at all times, growing closer and closer, getting rid of things that are holding us back, and growing closer to God each and every day.
It's funny that you say that. We talked about that yesterday also uh, sanctification. The Bible uses the word sanctified in a couple of different ways, but uh, the easiest way I think to look at it is that you are sanctified. You're set apart. You're made holy at once. You are being sanctified. You are continually. The Bible says
Yes.
the one who began a good work and you will complete it, or will continue it until the day of perfection, until the day of completion, and then you will be sanctified um, fully. And not that you are fully sanctified, but you are being sanctified and you will be sanctified. It's kind of an interesting concept to wrap your head around, but I like the fact of the Christianese that you said, and the because you hear that all the time. People think that sanctification, yeah, all right, that's me growing closer to God, and that's true.
Right.
But it's one of those both ands, that you are sanctified, you are set apart by the blood, by the work of Jesus. Those who have faith in Him are sanctified. You are set apart, and then you are being sanctified. It's kind of like the verse that says, and I heard this yesterday, and it makes so perfect sense. It's like, and I think it's in Philippians. I'll have to get back to you on that, but work out your salvation with fear and trembling. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that you're working out your salvation to earn it, to gain it. You are saved. Your salvation has been when regenerated, that made the new man, the new creation in Christ. But you were saved. You are being saved, and you will be saved. So that kind of put it in perspective to me a little bit on sanctify. Uh, so get these things that think about a lot of what do these things mean. Christianese. a lot of Christianese, but what do we mean? What does the Bible mean in these areas?
Yeah.
So glad you brought that up. But awesome. We made it through Luke 5.
Yes.
Tell you what, I didn't realize. Did you know, Dan? I'm sure you knew. Uh, that Luke is the longest gospel by word count. Now, I haven't verified this, but where I heard it, I trust the source. So, uh, if that is accurate, like I said, I trust the source. I assume that it is. Um, and we are at the end of chapter 5, 20 episodes in. We got some time. Y'all strap in. Season 4 is gonna last a minute, I think. So, anyways, food for thought. Little stat there. Throw it at you. I talked about
Yes,
many
sir.
stats in a while. So, anyhow, awesome. Well, a lot to think about in these last 2 episodes. I think that sure been a lot for me to think about, and that we can just sit and hopefully continue to ask the Spirit to teach and gain that concept of what these things mean. And as we grow in sanctification closer to Him, He can use this for.
Amen.
So, y'all have a good week at Fort Worth. If you're in Texas, if you're elsewhere, have a good week wherever you're going to be. I assume there's probably sheep and goats showing somewhere, and heifers and all over the place. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I know the gilts are in San Antonio. I know that. If it's not a pig or particularly a bear or a steer, I don't look at the calendar much. So
Right.
if you're in Louisiana, I know districts are done and you're getting ready to go to the main one. So everybody be safe, have fun. Look us up if you need anything,
Yes.
and look forward to seeing my good buddy co-host Dan Reed here face to face later
Probably in a
today.
few hours.
Yeah, it won't be long.
I don't know. Says we got to be there by 1. I don't know. We ain't no hurry.
1 to 7.
We got to pack. 1 to 7.
Yeah, I got to pack too. I got a lot of packing to do.
Yeah.
But awesome. Love y'all. We will see you soon or see you next week
Yeah.
on The One Truth.